Hello, everyone, and welcome back to a brand new episode of the Ocean Impact Podcast. My name is Amelia Helt, and I'm joined, as always, by my illustrious co-host, Tim Silverwood. Hey, Tim, how are you going today?
Doing well, Amelia, and doing well, listeners. Thanks for tuning in.
We've got an exciting one for you today. A returning guest to the podcast, Alexander Dungate, the CEO and co-founder of OnDeck Fisheries AI, winner of the Monitoring Spotlight Award presented by Dicker Data at last year's Ocean Impact Pitch Fest. And Tim, these guys are no stranger to Pitch Fest as finalists, and we were thrilled to see them return to the fold, but this time as award winners.
Yeah, really cool. Just goes to show that, you can just keep on applying to programs like this and keep getting recognized. And what I really loved about the application that we saw from OnDeck this time around was it was quite a significantly enhanced pitch video that they submitted. And that was backed up by some really compelling data explaining the progress that they've actually been through in that 12-month period. So the judges had no other choice but to say, you know what, these guys are on a bit of a tear. They are going to walk away winners.
It's so good. And I think, what's really cool for us is when we get to see support, cash prizes, investment, whatever it is, go on to create a much bigger impact beyond its face value, right? Or unlock extra opportunities or unlock extra funding. And as a Spotlight Award winner, OnDeck received a $10,000 cash prize, but they had actually secured government funding prior with, I think, Canada's Ocean Supercluster, I believe, don't quote me, which doubled the impact of those funds. So winning the Monitoring Spotlight Award actually became a $20,000 benefit to OnDeck.
Yeah, and good on those guys for receiving that significant boost in funding from the Canadian Ocean Supercluster. These sort of matched funding initiatives are such powerful arrangements where a government is basically saying, look, we will support you with a large amount of money. I think it was about 1.5 million Canadian dollars in this case. But if you can go and get your hands on an additional 1.5, that's part of the deal. So your 1.5 is actually 3. And yeah, we actually get Alexander talking a little bit about his involvement with the Canadian Ocean Supercluster. And these superclusters are really powerful models that we want to see more of around the world. We'd actually even love to see one down here in Australia one day.
Oh, wouldn't that be the dream? We'd love to see that. And think about it. When they applied to Pitch Fest for a second time, they had no idea if they'd become a finalist again, let alone win a cash prize. And so for any startups or entrepreneurs, oceanpreneurs, or ocean academics out there thinking of applying for our future programs and initiatives or joining our community by signing up to the newsletter, just know that these are the kinds of outcomes that are possible, and they're definitely the kind of results we want to see at Ocean Impact Organisation. So yeah, it's fantastic. And Tim, we've had Alexander on the podcast before, but would you like to run us through their awesome solution to help sustainably manage fisheries?
Yeah, gosh, it's one of those ones where you left talking to people that work in this space going, really? That's the way it is? Like, obviously, on one hand, it's really cool that certain fisheries around the world are quite often mandated or companies take it upon themselves to institute monitoring systems. So in the case of some fisheries, that means you need to have either a physical person on board watching the behavior and the practices and the catch quantities and qualities going on, or in some cases, video cameras. But video cameras obviously then result in the huge problem of, well, who's going to go and watch all that captured footage and actually come up with a report that says they did things well, bad, or terrible, like whatever that might be. So, here we are in 2024. If you're going to be monitoring video files and trying to capture data from it, what are you going to do? You're going to use AI. And Alexander's been doing this with OnDeck for quite a few years now. So when you look at the technology that they have, the track record, plus on the other hand, you've got this industry repeatedly and increasingly being asked to increase that traceability and that transparency, and more governments, consumers and businesses going down that path, then they're Johnny on the spot to be doing some really exciting things. And that shows in the growth that this fantastic young startup led by a young co-founder and CEO they are going to have a good future.
It's absolutely incredible. And I remember, thinking back to when they first joined OIO's community, the first time around, seeing the kind of like test video of the AI functionality kind of identifying people on a boat, the different types of fish on the boat, and how important that could be for capturing not just their catch but bycatch and other things like that go on fishing vessels. And then Alexander said something like that person that's having to review things manually, the backlog to have the footage reviewed was something insane, months and months, and it might have been like a year or something, but it blew my mind. And to just see how this technology is going to enable that to be so much faster and hopefully incredibly accurate, and it's such an important thing to happen so that we really know what we're doing with the ocean.
Yes, totally. And we're seeing more and more of it throughout the programs that we're running at the moment. Startups that are working on data, who are working on transparency and traceability. There is just so much demand for their solutions. So it's really fun to be playing in this space. And I just love knowing that people are going to listen to this episode and they are going to be genuinely fascinated to learn of what goes in to being able to trace where seafood comes from and what systems we're embracing to prevent some of those abhorrent practices that are happening out in the sea each and every minute of every single day.
Absolutely. Well, guys, I know you're going to enjoy this one. So thank you, Alexander, again for being on the podcast, and enjoy.
I'm so pleased to have on the Ocean Impact podcast again for the second time Alexander Dungate, who is the co-founder and CEO of OnDeck Fisheries AI. You were on the show 12 months ago because in Pitchfest 2022 you walked away with the Sustainable Harvesting Spotlight Award presented by Austral Fisheries. You came back strong in Pitchfest 2023 with a really fantastic pitch video and ended up walking away with the Ocean Monitoring Spotlight Award presented by Dicadata. I think that makes you the first consecutive Spotlight Award winner in Pitchfest year on year. Go, Alexander. How are you, mate?
Thank you for the intro, Tim. I'm doing well. Good to talk to you again.
I'm really excited. I mean, just looking at my notes and realizing that the last time we spoke was almost 12 months ago. We're recording this in late February 2024, and you were on the show in mid-February 2023, at least when we did the recording. But a lot has happened in 12 months. So because you have been on the show before, I will encourage people to head back and listen to episode 4 of the Pitchfest 2022 series if you really want to get that initial substance on the great work you've been doing. But it would be remiss of us to not at least give you the chance to share your spiel about the ocean challenge that you're addressing and the wonderful solution you've developed with OnDeck Fisheries AI. Over to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Tim. So yeah, in a nutshell, we're here to make fisheries monitoring accessible and scalable around the world. Fisheries monitoring is the process of seeing what and where fish is being caught out at sea. So as fishermen are out fishing, pulling stuff onto deck, there's security cameras installed on the boat that film what's happening. They come back to shore with thousands of hours of video footage. Fishing trips are quite long often. And then back on shore, some poor soul sits down at a computer to watch those thousands of hours of video to manually count all the fish, going 1 fish, 2 fish, red fish, blue fish, which is crazy. It's super slow, expensive, and it can't be scaled up around the world. And so at OnDeck, we use AI to automate that video review, making it faster and more affordable to monitor fisheries around the world.
When you say the video cameras are installed on these vessels and there's obviously rules and regulations around that, how extensive is that? Are they literally on all vessels or just select ones that are required to due to legislation? What are we talking about here in terms of the current scale?
Yeah, great question. Great question. So right now we're at about 3,000 to 5,000 cameras installed on vessels around the world, or vessels with cameras around the world. But there's this massive push from governments, from consumers, from regulators of all kinds, and private industry as well to bring more transparency into the seafood industry. I mean, there's some pretty bad exposés that have come out in recent times of the like murder at sea happens not infrequently in fisheries, and nobody wants to be caught selling fish where someone was killed after they caught the fish. And so there's everything from workplace safety and human rights to just sustainable fishing. Being able to see it's truly a critical component of fisheries management is being able to see what was caught where. And you can't just measure it when the fish come back to the dock, because often there's a certain type of fish out at sea that's more valuable. So say they're going for bluefin tuna and they catch one bluefin tuna and I don't know 100 dolphins, and they throw that probably would never happen, but they throw all the dolphins back at sea and they come back to shore and only report this one tuna. Then on paper, the only impact that fishing boat had on the ocean and then the ecosystem was this one fish they brought back. But in reality, it was kind of 10 or 100 times more. And the 10 times more bycatch of that accidental catch, it is actually a representative amount for a lot of fisheries. There's a lot of it's hard to catch exactly what you're looking for. And so for those two reasons, for the human rights aspect, protecting those workers at sea, and for the sustainability and traceability, this on vessel monitoring is a really critical component. And so in terms of scale, what this is looking like is a 10 to 12x growth. So from the 3,000 today to 30 to 50,000 cameras in the next 5 years is what's expected, which at scale will be producing 8 years of video footage to watch every single day, which is insane. And no matter how many people you have, it's physically not possible to watch that much video manually. And that's where we come in.
That's really cool. So currently only on a few thousand vessels, but as you've illustrated there, has to scale. I mean, realistically, they should be monitoring fisheries catch across the board, right? This is something where we know that the pressure's being faced on the ocean broadly, but certainly in certain fisheries in certain geographic locations, we need such strong regulations and rules around what we can and can't take. So, yeah, more and more video monitoring, but if they use the existing methodology, which is so manual and just causes these immense bottlenecks, then you're never going to be able to process it. So, super exciting. Tell us a little bit about the journey. How you obviously shared this on the last episode, but I just think it's really fascinating how your kind of passion for being a bit of a change maker was sort of just dissected with this little aha moment that was brought to you during a lecture, I believe, around this particular problem. Mm-hmm. And then the wheels started churning, and then you started to realize, well, this is something I could actually lean into. Give us a bit of a backstory again on your little aha moment and the initial inception of the idea.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started OnDeck right out of school. I was a student finishing my bachelor's in computer science and biology. I just love everything to do with ocean. So I took as my last elective a course just called Ocean Conservation. And in that course, the prof, Dr. Amanda Vincent, had this lecture on at-sea monitoring, or electronic monitoring, is the use of a camera, and how it's this rate limiting step preventing us from being able to sustainably manage our fisheries, because it just can't scale and it's just too expensive for most communities around the world to afford. And because of this, we're hooped. Anyway, next slide, and then just kept going. And I was thinking, hold on. There's clearly a better way to do this, because that was obviously one of my biology courses. And my computer science course, our homework over the weekend is build an object tracking computer vision model to, in essence, count things, and that can happen way faster and cheaper than a human can. So from that aha moment, I asked my professors at our Institute of Oceans and Fisheries, hey, who else can I talk to learn more about this? And they connected me to some other professors and some folks in industry. I also just started cold emailing even the @info of some of these fisheries monitoring companies that are doing this today. And the C-suite, like the CEOs or the presidents, would always respond back saying, like, yes, Alexander, like I'd love to meet with you. This is like one of the number one things we're trying to work on, is to bring AI into this. And so the market really pulled us into it. Even when I was just a student with an idea, OnDeck didn't exist on paper. It was very energizing.
Yeah, and I can't wait to dive in shortly to what you've achieved, even in the 12 months since we last spoke to you, which will be next up. But I wanted to just allow the listeners to really almost go with you on a bit of a journey into how this all works in the practical sense. I want to sort of take a moment to sort of, and this could be one of your new customers potentially, like how does the solution come into these existing settings what do you then do? How is the footage being processed? Just got to give us a real step-by-step process to fully understand how you plug in and make this positive impact to the ocean ultimately.
Yeah, happy to. So I think a great case study for this will be our one of our first customers on the west coast of Canada here, called Haum. It's a group of 5 Indigenous nations that are responsible for managing their own fisheries, but they also have oversight from the like the Federal Department of Fisheries and Oceans, the DFO. And so right now they have these cameras on their boats. They have to have monitoring legally. They have to be able to go out fishing. But the way this happens today is the boats go out, they're being filmed as they're fishing, and when the boats come back, the monitoring check that happens is people watch clips of the video, or all of it, depending on the fishery, just to make sure people were following the rules. And all that information gets sent off to a black box in the federal government, and the Indigenous Nations don't have any access to their own data that was collected about their fishing, about where they're bycatching, like where are they catching endangered species they don't want to, where are their target species, how much are they fishing. All of this like critical fisheries management information disappears. And so in this case, what we're doing is we're coming in, these cameras are already on the boats. We are able to upload that when the boat gets back to shore. We upload that video footage to the cloud and run through algorithms that automatically kind of reveal every time a fish was caught, every time a fish was thrown overboard, and things like that. And even from that basic where were fish caught, where were fish discarded, you can build fishing pressure maps automatically and in nearly real time, which is a capacity that's never been possible around the world before. And so with that, we're able to help them generate these kind of compliance checks much more quickly, but also, and most importantly, like give them access, give them data sovereignty over their own data. That's it in a nutshell.
That's really cool, particularly that last point there around data sovereignty. That's a really interesting angle there. So that's obviously a fishery who is proactive in wanting to adopt a solution like yours, or would there have been a requirement placed upon them, or did they choose to want to work with you?
So it is required that they have cameras on board. In most Canadian in almost all Canadian fisheries on the West Coast, it's mandatory to have this camera on board. On the East Coast, that's starting to pop up now as well. So that it's already mandated that there be this video review process, but they're choosing to work with us because we can do it way more quickly, way more affordably, and on top of just beating the manual methods, we can give them all this information that's never been possible to collect before around where their fish are, where their fishers are fishing, where the fishing pressures are, and a real world kind of reason they need this data is. Say the federal government comes in. Usually, fisheries closures happen in massive tranches. Like, hey, no one's allowed to fish in this massive 100-kilometer area because we're worried about catching yellow eye rockfish, for example. But now these communities, and then this like Haum has the data to say, actually, we've been fishing these areas every year, and we've never been catching yellow eye rockfish. We'd like to continue fishing in these areas, and that's really important for them to be able to catch fish for even just food. There's a lot of subsistence fishing communities on the west coast of Canada. There's no grocery stores within any drive. It's boat access only. So being able to continue fishing is really important. So giving them access to data to be able to speak to sustainable fisheries management is something they've never been able to do before. So that's really cool.
How is it in other parts of the world? I really wanted to sort of explore this question around the broader landscape. Obviously, you've given us a really good case study there of how it's so effective in this region with these First Nations communities who are really, I suppose, showing their best practice approach in order to be able to continue fishing for all the reasons that you mentioned. What are some of the other examples maybe around the world of where this kind of technology, be it you or one of your, a competitor in the space, has similarly come in and been either required or entered the market to, to similarly offer up a solution like this? Have you got any other examples around the world or any sort of insights into others in the space and how they're similarly finding market share?
Yeah, absolutely. I can I can go really deep on this. It's all I read about every day. So let me think of. I mean, I can talk about a global example, like some of the biggest fisheries in the world, like the tuna fisheries. Here we got like the Thai Union, biggest fishing company in the world, has committed to 100% monitoring, meaning like every single one of their boats, any boat they procure from, will have this camera on board and be monitored by 2025. So only a year from now. That's like super, super ambitious. And Walmart, for instance, has said that they will exclusively source tuna from boats that had these monitoring capabilities on board. So that's an example of kind of on the global scale that the demand from the consumer and private side, even when they're not being forced to. And that moves mountains to kick the private industry into gear. If like Walmart, one of the biggest buyers of tuna in the world, will say like, hey, you got to get these kind of transparency things in place. So that's great. And then on another regulatory example would be, say, Australia. So you guys used to have like this. You've had electronic monitoring, so the cameras on the boat for a while now, which is awesome. Well done. But it was all this manual review process, which is just super, super slow. And the previous way this was being done, like the provider just wasn't innovating. And so your government happily like just axed the contract, saying like there's way better ways to be doing this. And they're just in the process now of kind of exploring how, like, all right, how do we bring AI into this to make it way more affordable and to actually be able to get this data out. And when I actually, one thing I'd clarify here is when I say like get this data out of the video footage, is when you're watching a video manually, it's usually not feasible to watch the entire video feed end to end right now. So they have to end up spot checking like 25% of the trip. And so because of that, you don't get a full picture. You can't get these kind of maps and reports of like everything that was caught, where was it caught, etc. So that's a huge game changer that AI brings, is being able to process the whole thing.
That's fascinating. Yeah, thank you for giving us that extra bit of color around that. So what does that mean then to the sort of competitive landscape around the world? Is there a lot of other startups or established businesses sort of like you vying for these tenders or these contracts to enter these markets? So what's that competitive landscape like?
Very good question. So when we started, we were the only startup in the world focused on this. And the reason, but we weren't the first people to realize that AI is an obvious solution here. They had been trying for a decade, like literally a decade. Like if we look at other industries, like security camera industry, this like tech has already been ingrained for the past 10 years. But the way it's been done, and our biggest competitor today, is just kind of one-off projects. So an NGO who sees this as like a critical way, like it is being able to sustainably manage our fisheries is one of the biggest challenges of our generation. And so lots of NGOs throwing their weight behind it and their money behind it. So they say like, hey, here's $500,000. Some AI consulting company go like build us a machine learning model to count fish or whatever. Someone builds it. It becomes open source. The NGO says, great, here it is. It's on GitHub World. Go help yourself and use it. But then when we talk to the kind of government agencies or the folks that would actually use this, they're like, oh, it's what's GitHub, and wait, it's a Python file. Like, what do I do with this? And they don't actually have that. There's a lot of there's a big difference between projects and these like one-off projects and actual like products and long-term solutions. And so our biggest competitor right now is on a lot of these bids. You'll see folks that are looking to fill it with like just a one-off project. And the problem with projects, as you've probably seen in other industries, Tim, and I'm curious if you can chime in if you've seen this in other areas, but like one-off projects can't scale. And so we have to do a lot of education as we work around with people of just really explaining that, especially for software. You can't just build it and leave it. Like it'll stop working in a couple months or a couple years as the rest of the internet changes. It requires constant maintenance. And so the fishing industry is really interesting here. Well, they're really big fans of kind of paying someone to build it one off, show it can work, but not having any plan for keeping that going in the long term. I've kind of specific examples I can pull out here, but I'll pause.
Yeah, I'm just imagining, like you identified there, a big tranche of funding coming in just to sort of
ignite a project and maybe test the feasibility or see what's possible versus a startup who has built this into their DNA and their vision for the future. So I suppose that should, assuming you can deliver on whatever that tender might be or whatever the initial contract might be, you're going to be a better investment, right? Because you are in it to solve the problems that are ultimately going to lead to your future success. So I'm sure there must be examples. I mean, one comes up that might be Hullbot, for example, a startup that we work with down here in Australia who is cleaning the biofoul off boat hulls. They started working on yachts and sort of pitching people to sort of, yes, you can reduce your carbon emissions, but your yacht might also travel a little bit faster because it's got a nice, slick, clean hull. You don't need to worry about other types of maintenance. But their future is really about going into ferry fleets and other fleets of ships and saying, hey, we think we can be that solution to avoid you doing all these nasty things with biocide or huge expensive biofoul removal and obviously the CO2 reductions. But in order to kind of get to the end where their solution works optimally, they need to go in and do those customer trials and work really closely with the partner to help them actually identify and to tweak their solution to be fit for purpose.
Yeah, that's actually a great example. And when you bring up RFPs, these like requests for proposals that governments will put out, that's a huge challenge for startups because often there's criteria around like, oh, you have show like 2 to 5 years of financials and tell us about other times you've worked with customers of this size. It's like, well, we started last year, so we've never worked with a $10 million contract before. And so that's one of our biggest challenges. And I think you mentioned a bit ago, I could maybe talk about what's next and jumping ahead here. That is what's next for OnDeck is there's, as a startup, there's all these little like stepping stones and hurdles we have to build up to be able to kind of play in the big leagues of engaging with these countrywide RFPs. And so that's what's up next. Is we've kind of been working with a bunch of these smaller projects to be able to tick all the boxes to be able to bring this to scale.
Yeah, it's probably a good avenue just to sort of talk about just what you have achieved in the last 12 months. And you shared around a great update on 2023 in January that really highlighted some wonderful progress that you made. So I might even sort of send it over to you if you like to sort of speak to some of those highlights. But obviously, new customers, new paid customers coming in, some new funding sources, and really excitedly, your ability through those means to build the team. So that you've got some great people on board. So maybe just give us a bit of a update on some of those major achievements in the last 12 months.
Yeah, happy to. Like this time last year, it's when we were chatting on the podcast, I was the only full-time employee at OnDeck. And for any entrepreneurs listening, being a solo founder is so hard. If you're a solo founder right now, I have huge respect for you. Keep going. That's amazing. If you have an option to not be a solo founder, if you're considering like, oh, should I do this by myself or get a co-founder, definitely go for co-founders. This journey is very difficult and it helps. So this time last year, my co-founder was away at Cambridge doing his master's in machine learning there, and it was just me and 9 interns working all part-time. Terrible way to run a company. I can advise strongly against that if anyone's considering it. And so, but from there, from these like humble beginnings, we were able to get our first paid client, which was amazing. So working with the Nature Conservancy in the Central Eastern Pacific. And this is kind of automatically counting catch and discards on fisheries there. And then we were able to get some large scale funding. We were awarded a $3.5 million project from Canada's Ocean Supercluster, which is really cool. To go check them out online. They're a large scale funding organization from the government to stimulate the ocean economy in Canada. And that's matched. So half of that, or just under, like 1.5 million, comes from the government, and the industry partners in our collaboration match the rest of it. And with that, we were able to really get supercharged and hire the team. We're now at 6 full-time employees, or like me and 5 others. We poached my co-founder back from Cambridge, which was excellent. We've got a bunch PR-wise. It's very cool to see as a startup, and Tim, you probably experienced this, and a lot of the listeners maybe have. It's amazing how quickly things can happen. So a lot of my role models and heroes in life were National Geographic explorers, and so we got backing from National Geographic as well this year. They're big fans of what we're doing, and so that's, and we won. We were the first ever apparently to become back-to-back Ocean Impact Organization winners, or Pitch Fest winners. That was cool. Yeah.
I really want to focus a little bit on the ability to build the team, and obviously kudos to you. And I think last time you were on the podcast, you were spruiking the opportunities to come and to volunteer and to intern. I'm sure that's still a part of your model moving forward. But yeah, just tell us a little bit about that. I guess the benefits and the challenges of leaning into interns and volunteer work versus that sort of game-changing opportunity when you do secure that funding to go and fully hire full-time people and really, choose who you want to bring in and be supported to be by your side. Let's just talk a little bit about that process.
Yeah, very good question. So in the impact space, I see there's a lot of people who are willing to volunteer if they really believe in the mission, and that's cool, especially students. I mean, we were all students. My co-founders and I were students when we started OnDeck, so we have this keen belief that like students can do anything. Like you don't have to have experience to change the world, and because we figured it all out on the go, so we assume everybody can figure it out on the go. Turns out like not everyone, like you can't just pick a random person off the street, but there are like definitely stand out students that can operate at full-time capacity. I think the biggest on the volunteer front in Canada, or at least in our province, unpaid internships are actually illegal, and so you have to pay your interns. And a big challenge last year was the grant organization that was funding a lot of our interns went bankrupt out of nowhere with no warning. So we had to get our army of 9 interns that were funded and through this program together and say like, hey, we're so, with no warning, like day of, just say like, hey, bad news, like we can't pay any of you. We have to let you all go. And the biggest compliment I've possibly ever gotten was nobody wanted to quit. Every single person wanted to continue working with OnDeck volunteering. And that was amazing to me that we had built this team where like everybody believed in it so much, and it was such a supportive team that everybody enjoyed it. That was cool. But like for your question about full-timers, then it is another level of kind of the dependence and efficiency, I would say, as well, of having like 6 full-time people who like come in every single day, work 27-hour days is amazing. Having people that are just like fully dedicated to OnDeck day and night is great.
So securing that funding from the Canadian Ocean Supercluster, tell us a little bit about that process. Had you sort of been actively seeking similar funding opportunities, or were you sort of focused predominantly on that particular opportunity? And maybe that's a good little lesson for those people out there finding that first sort of major funding source that does unlock this capability to build a team and really let the rubber hit the road.
Mm-hmm. That's a really good question, Tim. We started funding ourselves off pitch competitions, like Pitch Fest, but we were just grinding like student pitch competitions, all these things. We raised a couple $100,000 that way, especially in the ocean space. There's a lot right now, great space to be in. But that's pretty slow. Like it's great when you're a student, but it's just not like it doesn't scale up. And so and software talent is really expensive. So we started to look at bigger funding options. And in Canada, we're really lucky to have the super cluster. And I know some other countries do as well. So I think it's really important for people to kind of don't delay like going for that big check. Go for it as early as you can. But I think it would also be okay to do that as dilutive funding if the funders kind of have the timelines and patience to wait for if you're at a very early stage. Anything in particular you're curious about for the supercluster opportunity?
Yeah, just I'd love to sort of I guess how clear it was that was the funding and the relationship that you wanted to secure. Was there other funding sources that were similarly interesting, or was it just so clear that if we want to build our organization here in Canada and we're operating in the ocean space, these are the go-to people to work with?
Yeah, it was a bit of a no-brainer because it's non-dilutive funding. So it's just a very large grant. And so getting a $1 million grant is pretty sweet as a very early stage startup. Like we were just about a year old at that point. So that was very unique. And I think one of the biggest things of value that came out of it, I mean, two things. One, we, as the lead, we had to go out in the industry and build a coalition of industry partners. So that's how you show to the government, like, hey, people actually want this. Is we had to find a whole host of people, which was easy, happily, who really wanted to buy this and work with us to develop it. And so we built a list of fishing companies, like monitoring companies, NGOs, all this stuff to back our bid. And so that the first thing that came out of it was having this network of people that are super excited to work like hand in hand with us on getting our tech out there. And two is it was the first person to write over $1 million check behind OnDeck. And in the funding space, we've noticed that really helps, especially having the authority of a government behind you. Like, yes, we think these kids, yeah, we are just a couple of kids and new grads. We think these kids can change the world. It's a worthy investment. We've done all this due diligence, and holy smokes, it was a lot of due diligence. These guys know what they're doing. That goes a really long way.
And so how long will that funding support you for, and sort of what is the future horizons for how you want to raise funds? Obviously, you mentioned 2024 all about securing more and more recurring revenue from new customers and existing customers, but how do you sort of look at the funding landscape moving forward, and sort of when does that take place beyond the supercluster funding?
Yeah. We're flirting with VCs as well. We keep the relationships warm. The OSC funding takes us through 2025, but there's always I'm very hungry. Our whole team is. We like to move quickly, and so if we see that VC funding can make us move faster, then we'll go for it 100%. I see the VC landscape as very, very warm. I think it's easier for us as a software startup that's kind of like great margins, all these advantages. So, and I've had a couple ocean tech VCs tell me there's more money looking for a home than there are ideas to give it to in the ocean space right now. Which I don't know if it's entirely true. I think it might be like that ideas that cross their threshold of viability. But I think it's a very good time to start an ocean tech company.
Yeah, look, I think that is true on their side, and that's certainly your follow-up point there, your caveat around, well, yeah, it's really what's going to fit into their nice little box that they've kind of created to service their mandate. But yeah, we'd certainly agree with that. We've obviously seen in our 4 years so many fantastic startups, and every day, every week, there is just a new flurry of them becoming visible to us, or maybe kind of stepping outside of their origins and becoming a real and viable solution. But yeah, the funding landscape is also swelling consistently. There's more and more money coming into the space, and probably challenges around deploying some of those funds in accordance with those funding mandates. But it's a really, really exciting time, and great to hear that you've got this non-dilutive funding through to 2025 to give you that capacity to get those customers on the books, prove your efficacy, and then start, like you said, moving from flirting with the VC world to maybe securing some fantastic investors.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what else is on the horizon then? What are you sort of looking at over the next sort of 12 to 24 months? I know we sort of touched on it a number of times in the chat so far, but maybe give us a bit of a picture of how it looks for you in the next year or two.
Yeah. Okay. So so as I mentioned, there's like the I think probably share this with most folks running startups, where our team is super hungry to move quickly, and we're always surprised by the fact that things move more slowly than we'd expect. Just because we can move quickly doesn't mean the people we're working with can move super fast and work 27-hour days as well. So I think we're always hungry to see, like, the folks we're working with right now, like the Indigenous Nations. It's incredible to see what's possible when we put this technology in the hands of the ocean community and fisheries management. So in the next year, what's next is kind of really seeing that scale up. Where we've got some kind of things in the works that I can't speak publicly about yet, but it's breaking into that world of kind of government to government level, the B2G world, which would be incredible, because then the impact of what we're doing isn't like a couple dozen boats or 100 boats. It's hundreds of boats at once, and like entire areas and entire fisheries that all of a sudden get so much more kind of sustainable fisheries management insight and improvements on. So that's what's really exciting to me. I'll keep thinking about what else is.
Does that then translate across? Does that translate across to you? I mean, I know we spoke about in the last episode. You've had great opportunities to go and attend various conferences and aggregations of people that are similarly aligned, and particularly, the young ocean, conservation and entrepreneur community as well. How much of your sort of role moving forward is positioned around advocacy and making sure that you can lean into those changes, either be it policy or a private company like Walmart developing some new stringent guidelines around the monitoring required to feed into their supply chain? Like, how will your role as an advocate play out moving forward? Does that light you up? Does that sort of make sure that you're on the bill for as many conferences as possible so you can rub shoulders or get on stage? How do you sort of view that moving forward?
Mm-hmm. I think I have to do more rubbing shoulders. I think I kind of see it as three phases of when we were just starting out. Phase one, great to do all these conferences and put ourselves out there, and everyone said like, yes, this is an incredible idea. It helps raise that early stage funding, those grants, etc. And so like stage one, check. Now we're in stage two, which was like, all right, guys, that was great. Like, let's see if you can actually build it. And so we've got our heads down, building, talking to customers, like actually getting this out into the world. And that I find very hard to take time away from, to go to a conference. If I like a bunch of these and like amazing opportunities, like things with National Geographic, where a bunch of my heroes are there, but it wouldn't actually move our solution forward. It doesn't make the ocean a better place if I'm just like hanging out with Jane Goodall for a week. I mean, that would be so cool. But so that's a really hard one in my mind. And so then in phase three, once we've like proven that we've like built the tech, the team, we're more financially stable and it's out and going in the world, then to like really scale up, all of a sudden that rubbing shoulders at conferences becomes critical again. And that's really how I've been studying this. I've been reaching out to CEOs of big ocean tech companies, trying to learn how do you get these kind of $10 million contracts with like the government of France, et cetera. And it happens when you're speaking at a UN Oceans panel together. Like, I made a joke, he laughed afterwards, we went for a beer, and then a contract was signed. Not quite that simple, but that's how it starts in essence. And so I love that part. But we're not quite there yet. We're in the heads down mode. So I think I have to get out a little more. I'd be curious to hear what your opinion is on that, Tim. Like, do you see folks doing like too much or too little of that? Or what are your thoughts on that?
I really like the way you broke that down into those three components. I think that's pretty much spot on, right? Particularly if, like you said there, your funding to get started and do the build really relied upon people being super excited and inspired by perhaps you as the individual with the grand idea. Then, of course, get out there, be visible, build the brand, make people know and talk about you. It's going to give you that biggest head start. But then that second point was so bang on, right? Because at some point, if you just keep doing that, but you do not have the substance to show, then people are going to start to take notice. They're going to smell, they're going to get that whiff, and that's going to really start to sacrifice your reputation and your potential there. So you are in that stage now, as you've identified, where it's all about results. It's all about being able to prove and obviously scale the technology to deliver. And then once you have that, then you almost come out of the curtain again. Here I am, or maybe you lean into some other methodology. So people out there are doing that business development, that advocacy piece for you. So I think you hit the nail on the head there with that. Seems really smart. But obviously the flip side of that is that you have to go into that hunker down mode, which maybe doesn't light you up in the same way. You're missing out on those opportunities. You're not hanging out with Jane Goodall. You're in a lab with the team hacking it out. So that's just part of the journey, right?
Yeah. And it's honestly the just working with my team 24/7 does light me up. It's super energizing. So yeah, they're both fun. But I'm glad to hear you think I'm onto something there, Tim. Good to hear.
I loved it in the last episode and this episode. You're not you're not afraid to put the questions back onto me as the podcast host. I think I made a comment before we started recording today. That isn't always the case. So yeah, maybe over to you if there is any questions that you sort of wanted to come at me with today. More than happy to add my element in there, because I think we've covered off on a lot of the stuff I wanted to speak to today. I did have a point there around what's happening at the global level around sort of policy or initiatives that can open up more opportunities for you. But I think we've actually touched on that quite a lot. You obviously mentioned Walmart. I think you mentioned the MSC. Obviously, the High Seas Treaty work at the moment is pretty profound. But do you have any questions for me that you wanted to share today, so I can?
Yeah. I mean, I kind of have two. I was one's like a deeper one, will end on a high note, but I was just touching on like one of the hardest things I've ever done was being a solo founder at OnDeck. That just for that brief time, God, that was awful. So I was wondering, like, Tim, you built it like OIO into this beautiful thing, and others like the Take Three for the CEO. What is there a time or a thing that you found the hardest in your journey building either of those two things, or another thing that like really stands out of that was like one of the hardest things you've ever done?
Yeah, like I think, and we spoke about this a little bit on the last episode in terms of the challenges or the words of advice. Actually, you questioned beyond from my journey. I did reference Take Three and what it was like sort of building an organization that didn't really have a refined strategy. So you sort of found yourself at multiple points along the way bumbling along, or sort of getting a little bit caught out and going, oh gosh, I've really got to act upon this because I hadn't really forecast for it. With OIO, much deeper strategy. Everything has been intended, not always. Of course, you have plans, and plans change, and things move, and they change shape. But I think the thing I would probably lean on is going to be what you hear so often when we ask startups around their challenges. It is around sort of funding. It's around sort of that point in the journey where what your contribution is going to be to that grand vision, and you move through the twists and turns of finding those with the capacity to support you to get to that vision. And it is a journey. It meanders. One moment you'll feel like everything is just so bright and shiny and the sky is the limit. And the next you've got to look and go, okay, well, global economics have changed considerably. We're in a situation now where people aren't spending, be that, putting money into investing in startups or putting money into philanthropy, or corporates are just pulling budgets to sponsor good corporate social responsibility initiatives. And you just got to be so alert to when those indications are happening and be ready and willing to make those adjustments and modifications along the way. So, and that can be frustrating because, maybe this is, true of you as well. When your vision is so set, when you've got such clarity of what you're here to do, you just want to get on and do the work. You don't want to go and have to spend all your time, focused on fundraising or focused on partnerships and all these other things to fuel the machine. You just want to do the work. So that's always challenging. I reckon that must be true of so many startups who listen to this podcast.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's cool. That's cool, Tim. And then my other question is what are you most proud of everything you've done? What do you think is the most impressive thing you've ever done?
Yeah, look, I'm proud that I've been able to sustain a career built around my passion and my super strong desire to work in positive impact, because I know that there's a lot of people out there, I suspect, other listeners to this podcast are in industries or careers where they're maybe not super lit up and inspired by the work they're doing, and they think and they know that there is another path or another version in a parallel universe of their life where they have gone and been able to build a successful career by working in the impact space. So, for me, I'm not going to say it was super easy. Like, I had to go through plenty of trials and tribulations, particularly after doing my academic studies and then dabbling in different career pathways to see the one that was going to reward me from an impact perspective, but also a financial perspective. And, to that point, like Take Three for the Sea, building a very grassroots charity from scratch was super tough. And I had to live a very, very lean existence for a long time while the thing built to a level. But what was wonderful, I think, is through all those experiences, when I did come to building OIO with Nick, I sort of knew what my minimum requirements were, and we needed to then build that collectively together with his into the model to then when we open the doors, which is, we're 4 years into the journey now, has been successful. So yeah, really proud that I've been able to sustain that career. And of course, now that with Ocean Impact Organisation, it's just the sheer magnitude of fantastic oceanpreneurs like you that we get to interact with and that we get to support. I mean, we're up to 99 startups and entrepreneurs that we've supported through our programs in 4 years. And the model for the future is that only goes north in a really exciting way. So yeah, I just can't wait to see where people like yourself go, and who else is on the horizon who we haven't even met yet. It's a really positive space to be operating in. I think we deal with very dire and frightening challenges that the ocean and the planet face, but we work with people who are willing to take on those challenges with very inspiring solutions. So that air of positivity is what keeps me going every single day.
That's awesome. So that's a beautiful answer from like building the lean charity to today, and kind of getting a better example, better kind of like more solid base of how to operate. That's really cool. And I'm excited for 4 years down the road, looking back and seeing like the impact of OnDeck. That's gonna be really cool. And I can attest, like the Pitch Fest and these communities. I mean, they're making a massive difference for us, especially last year when the Pitch Fest winnings we got were quadrupled by a government grant. So it actually had like a really big impact on our team. That's like we might not be here. Yeah, it depends. I don't know how last year was very lean, and so yeah, you guys are actually making a big splash in the ocean space. It's really cool.
What was it like? I mean, we're going to wrap up their episode soon, but yeah, I really respected the pitch video you did put in last year, and how you embraced a really creative approach to storytelling to build that piece of collateral that sells you into. Obviously, it was very successful for Pitch Fest, but it's very valuable for so many avenues. What are your perspectives on that storytelling piece? Was that always clear to you that you needed to get that right, or have you sort of increased that understanding of the importance of being able to tell a story in a great visual asset, for example, like that pitch video?
That's a really good question. That's actually one of for what's up next. This getting better at storytelling and doing more storytelling for OnDeck is one of the number one things, because I've noticed, even if we're working really hard every day, but we can't communicate that to anybody, other people don't know. And I'm a big believer in if an idea can't be communicated, it doesn't exist. And I think storytelling is just, it's such a big part of changing the world in any capacity, like starting a company, to doing anything meaningful. You have to tell that story to people. And it's something I want to do more of. For that, our pitch video was actually made by Justin, one of our software engineers. Great guy, and apparently has a passion for videography on the side. And we just walked around campus for the day and made this sweet video, which was really fun. But yeah, I've definitely, it's don't underestimate the power of good storytelling, for sure. And for me, I think of it a lot in writing, like even any like writing to a customer. Anytime you're communicating, you're telling a story. So I think it's for any listeners who are in high school, take English writing seriously, or even in university. Enriched English is worth it. Practice expressing your ideas.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much for all your additions today. 2 podcasts down. I wonder when the next one will be. It could be next year. It could be into the future, but you'll certainly...
This time next year, we're gunning for that number 1 spot. We're not here to mess around. So hopefully third time's a charm. We'll see.
Oh, that's awesome to hear. Well, you're more than welcome. Anyone can keep on applying to Pitch Fest year on year, and obviously our other innovation programs, if they're right for people at the right time of their journey as well. So, yeah, look, over to you, Alexander, for any final comments or things you wanted to share today, and if not, just let people know how to follow the journey.
Yeah, I mean, thanks, Tim. It's been great conversation. Always like talking with you. For anyone listening, come check out OnDeck Fisheries AI. OnDeck.fish is our website. Easy to find. And if you have any questions about starting an ocean tech startup, or anything like, always feel free to reach out on LinkedIn. Happy to chat. Also, Tim is awesome to talk to if you get a chance. He's great for questions as well. So thanks, Tim.
Thank you, mate, and speak to you soon.
Can't take the ocean out of me.